One of the worst genocides in history, the Assyrian Genocide, in which about 400,000 people were killed. The Assyrian Genocide is said to be the deliberate and pre-planned destruction of the Assyrians of the lands under the control of Ottoman Empire in the middle and before World War I by the Young Turks and Sultan Abdulhamid II. This genocide was simultaneous with the genocide of Armenians and Greeks. Genocide of the Assyrian civilian people in the north of the Middle River, especially in Hakkari, Torabdin, Shalar province, Urmia, and southwest Turkey today by the Ottoman forces, sometimes with the occupation of Arab tribes and local Arab militias, took place in Iraq between 1914 and 1925. The death toll was 275,000 people, according to Professor David Gant's statistics. In the report presented in the Treaty of Lausanne, the statistics of the people killed in the Assyrian areas were estimated at 300,000 people, which was equal to half of the Assyrian nation. In World War I and before that, ethnic groups such as Armenians and Greeks were massacred. Let's not forget that about 3 million Christians were killed in the genocide by the Ottoman government. The population of Assyrians in the early 20th century in the Ottoman Empire, along with Assyrians living in Iran, Iraq, and Syria, is estimated between 600,000 people and 1 million people. A significant population of Assyrians lived in Urmia, Van, Hakkari, Torabdin, Shalar province, and the east of Diyarbakir, Erzurum, and Betlis provinces. Assyrians, like other Christians living in Turkey, were considered as second-class citizens. Violence against Assyrians, forced conversion and confiscation of civil lands, assassination, attack and kidnapping were the main action of the regime, and the cruelty that Assyrians endured. Expulsion of the Assyrians was often accompanied by looting, rape, and murder. Many of the deportees were killed or died of hunger and homelessness on the way. The first massacre by Badr Khan Pasha between 1840 and 1847, when more than 10,000 Assyrians of Hakkari and Botan were massacred. In 1895, in the south of Diyarbakir province, the Ottoman forces killed about 25,000 Assyrians. The commander of the Ottoman forces wrote in his memoirs that his forces massacred about 300,000 Christians living in Diyarbakir and the villages around the city, or forced them to emigrate. The massacres of the Ottoman government in the cities of Diyarbakir, Karpert, Mardin, and Orfe about the Christians living in those cities were reported by the German consul in July and September 1915. Judith Pasha presented a report in February 1915. He said, "We cleared Azerbaijan and one of Assyrians and Armenians." At the end of 1915, Judith Pasha, the military governor of Van, ordered the massacre of about 4,000 defenseless Assyrian and Armenian civilians and 20,000 people in at least 30 villages after his 8,000 troops entered the city of Sirt. The great commander of the Assyrians, Edishir, was killed by the Kurds. In 1918, a group of Assyrian immigrants who were saved from the massacre of Turks came to the city of Bakuba, and another group of 15 to 60,000 people, along with Armenians, arrived in Baghdad and settled in the camps built by the British Army and lived in tent conditions. The immigrants were provided with food, but their living conditions were unbearable. One of the witnesses testified that, in the beginning, the average number of deaths reached 70 to 80 people per day. After concluding the Madras Treaty, Ottoman Turkey began to withdraw its forces from Azerbaijan. The Assyrians hoped for England and were ready to return to their former regions. The Iranian authorities did not want the Assyrians to return to Urmia, even armed. The command of the Assyrian chiefs issued an order to collect the weapons, and a squad of Englishmen came and handed over the collected weapons. The British sent a number of Assyrian immigrants to Mesopotamia. In 1932, after British support for Iraq expired, 70,000 Assyrians requested that a piece of land be given to them in their settlement. But Baghdad opposed these demands, and the British, who no longer needed the services of the Assyrians, left them alone, and the local Arab militia massacred the Assyrians of that region. On July 18, 1933, Marshim Benjamin was introduced as an undesirable element in Iraq and went to Cyprus, where he protested against the indifference of the British. The British also tried to divide the Assyrians, Kurds and Arabs, and tried to solve the Assyrian issue forever. In August 1933, when 1,000 Assyrians were trying to move their families to Syria under the French protectorate, they were confronted by the armed forces of the Iraq government on the bank of Tigris River. According to the statistics provided by the National Council of Assyrians, between 1914 and 1918, about 275,000 people were killed. Some of the Assyrians where the Assyrians were killed include 25,000 people in Midyat, 21,000 people in Batan, 7,000 people in Nasibin, 7,000 people in Salih Orfa, 7,000 people in Gutshans, 6,000 people in Mardin, 5,000 people in Diyarbakir, 4,000 people in Adana, 4,000 people in Braibi, and 7,500 people in Karpert. New York Times in a report writes, about 800 people were killed in Urmia and another 2,000 people died to the disease. 200 Assyrians were burned alive inside the church. The Russians discovered more than 700 bodies in Haftuan village of Salma city near Urmia city, where they were naked and mutilated. The New York Times wrote in another report on October 11 that 12,000 Iranian Christians were massacred or killed due to disease. Hundreds of Christian girls were raped and forcibly converted to Islam, and 3/4 of Christian villages were destroyed. On March 11, 2010, the genocide of Assyrians, Armenians and Greeks was officially recognized by the Swedish parliament. The Assyrian Genocide has been recognized by the New South Wales local government in Australia and by the Australian Foreign Affairs Council as well as the state of New York. In December 2007, the International Genocide Assembly, formed by history researchers and historians, recognized the genocide of Assyrians and Greeks.